My daughter is not worth the investment. That sentence was supposed to be the end of me. Instead, it became the beginning. Months later, the same man who said those words called me with a shaking voice, begging me to save our family from falling apart. My name is Lily Sanders. I'm 22 years old, and this is the story of how my family decided I wasn't worth a single dollar. Until suddenly, I was the only thing they couldn't afford to lose. Back then, I was just a college student with a dream that didn't fit the neat little boxes my family liked. I didn't want law school or finance or anything safe. I wanted design, color, typography, stories told through visuals. To me, that wasn't just a hobby. It was the only thing that ever made sense. To them, it was a waste of time. The conversation that changed everything started at our dining table. No raised voices, no dramatic storm outside, no broken dishes. Just a calm verdict delivered like a bank statement. You're not worth the investment. That was it. Not your degree isn't practical. Not we can't afford tuition right now. It was you. I was the bad investment, the sinking stock, the one they decided to cut before they lost too much. I remember sitting there, staring at my untouched plate, realizing that the people who were supposed to believe in me the most had just announced that I was officially not worth the risk. So I made a decision. If they wouldn't invest in me, I would. I packed my things into 2 suitcases, grabbed my sketchbooks, and walked out of that house. There was no dramatic goodbye, no one chasing me to the door, no last-minute apology. Just silence, like they were already adjusting to life without me. I wasn't running away from failure. I was walking toward the one person who was still on my side, myself. I found a tiny room I could barely afford, took the first job I could get at a small cafe, and promised myself one thing. I would turn their rejection into proof that they were wrong about me. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know that one day people would pay real money for my designs, or that I'd be trusted with branding an entire company. I didn't know that my work would become the kind of investment my family never saw coming. All I knew was this: if I ever broke, it wouldn't be because they decided I wasn't enough. Months later, when my life finally started to look like something I could be proud of, my phone lit up with a familiar number I hadn't seen in almost a year. I hesitated. I could have ignored it. I could have kept making lattes and sending out design proposals and pretending my past didn't exist. But I didn't. I answered. "Lily," the voice on the other end said, cracked with stress and discomfort. "We need your help." The same people who once told me I wasn't worth the investment were suddenly treating me like their last hope. You want to know how we got from that sentence at the dining table to this desperate phone call? How the disappointment of the family became the one holding all the power. If you've ever been treated like a bad investment by your own family, stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you exactly how I turned their rejection into my revenge and my future. When I first left home, survival came before revenge. I moved into a cramped studio apartment with peeling paint and thin walls, where I could hear my neighbors arguing, laughing, and living lives I wasn't part of. The rent swallowed almost everything I made, so I grabbed the first job available, a barista position at a cozy cafe called The Creative Cup. The name felt like a sign. By day, I pulled espresso shots, frothed milk, and wiped down tables. My apron smelled like coffee and sugar, my feet ached constantly, and my hands were always a little sticky. But behind the counter, taped to the wall near the register, I hung a tiny piece of myself, a simple flyer I designed offering custom logos, social media graphics, and branding on a budget. It was printed on cheap paper, but it was mine. At first, nobody cared. People ordered caramel lattes and iced Americanos without even glancing at my flyer. But I kept it there. Every break, I pulled out my sketchbook or my tablet, refining ideas, experimenting with color palettes, teaching myself more about typography and layout. One afternoon, a woman in her 30s, sharp eyes, messy bun, laptop covered in stickers, stood at the counter longer than usual. She pointed at the flyer. "Did you make this?" she asked. "Yes," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "I'm trying to build a portfolio." She looked at it again, then back at me. "It's good. I'm a freelance designer too. Start with people around you. Small businesses, local events, anything. Just get your work out there." Her name was Sarah, and whether she meant to or not, that small conversation shifted everything. She started coming in often, always with her laptop, always working on something. Sometimes she'd wave me over during a slow period and show me what she was designing. "See this?" she said once, pointing at her screen. "The client doesn't just want a pretty logo, they want a story. You're good at that. Use it." Her words clung to me longer than the coffee smell on my clothes. Following her advice, I offered free or low-cost designs for local bake sales, charity events, and small online shops run by people we saw at the cafe. I stayed up late after my shifts, eyes burning, back aching, building visuals that made someone else's idea look real. The pay was small, sometimes nothing more than a thank you message and a tagged post. But with each project, I saw something shift, not just in my portfolio, but in how people looked at me. At the cafe, I wasn't just the girl who refilled the pastries anymore. I was the designer. Regulars started asking if I could help with business cards, menus, Instagram posts. Word spread in quiet ways. "She's really good. She designed this for me. You should ask her." Meanwhile, at home, my tiny, cluttered studio, I set up a corner that became my sanctuary. A second-hand desk, a thrifted chair, a cheap lamp, and my tablet. I created a website using a free template, uploaded my work, and put a simple line on the homepage. I design brands for people who refuse to stay small. It wasn't just about them. It was about me. Every time I hit publish on a new project, I imagined my father's voice. "You're not worth the investment." Every time a client paid an invoice, no matter how small, I imagined that sentence cracking. Just a little. I was exhausted, constantly juggling early shifts and late-night design marathons. But for the first time in my life, I could see a version of myself that didn't exist for my family's approval. I wasn't their disappointment anymore. I was becoming my own success story, quietly, brick by brick. What I didn't know was that one of these small projects would soon lead me to a client who would change everything and put me directly on the path to that desperate phone call I'd answered. It started with a regular who always ordered an oat milk latte and spent hours on her laptop at the corner table. One day, she walked up to the counter just as I was wiping down the espresso machine. "Hey," she said, "you're Lily, right? I've seen some of your designs on the cafe's Instagram. Did you make those?" I froze. "Yeah, I did." She smiled. "I'm Mia, founder of a startup called EcoVibe. We're about to launch a line of sustainable lifestyle products, and we're looking for someone to help us with branding. I like your style. Are you taking on new clients?" My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear myself respond. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." We set up a meeting after my shift. I showed her my portfolio. Small projects, charity posters, cafe menus. Nothing flashy, nothing corporate, but all mine. She scrolled slowly, nodding, asking questions. "I don't want something that looks like every other eco brand," she said. "No generic green leaves and circles. I want people to feel movement, change, like choosing us is choosing a different future." I understood that feeling more than she realized. We started working together. I spent nights sketching logo concepts, experimenting with typography that felt both bold and warm. I curated color palettes that weren't just green, but earthy, grounded, modern. We designed packaging, social media templates, website layouts. Mia gave feedback, but she trusted me, really trusted me. "Go with your gut," she'd say. "You clearly know what you're doing." Every time she said that, it was like pouring concrete into the foundation of my confidence. Weeks later, When EcoVibe's pre-launch campaign went live, people noticed. Social media engagement spiked. Emails came in. Other small brands started following EcoVibe and asking, "Who did your branding?" Mia always answered the same way. Lily did. She referred me to two more clients. Those clients referred me to others. The projects grew bigger. The invoices grew larger. My tiny studio corner became a full-blown workstation. Sticky notes everywhere, design files stacked in folders, deadlines written all over my calendar. One night, as I was exporting final files for EcoVibe's official launch, I got an email that made me stop breathing for a moment. Congratulations, Lily. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into our advanced visual design program. It was from a prestigious design institute I had applied to months before, almost as a dare to myself, back when I thought I was still that bad investment. I sat there, staring at the screen, reading the words again and again. Accepted. I had gotten in without anyone pulling strings, without anyone paying my way, without anyone vouching for me except my own work. For the first time, I realized something crystal clear. My worth had never depended on my family's approval. They just didn't have the imagination to see it. I wish I could say that I celebrated with friends, popped champagne, and danced around my apartment. Instead, I quietly closed my laptop, lay back on my bed, and let a single thought sink in. If they could see me now, would they still think I wasn't worth it? I didn't know that soon. They would see me. Not because I went back to them, but because their world was about to crumble, and they'd come looking for the one person they had treated as disposable. Me. It happened on a Tuesday. I was finishing a logo revision for a local bakery when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting a client or a friend. Instead, I saw a name I hadn't seen in almost a year. Mom? Every muscle in my body tensed. For a moment, I just stared at the notification. My first instinct was to let it fade away, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity is a cruel thing. I opened the message. Lily, I know we haven't spoken in a while. Things have been difficult here. Your father lost his job. The business isn't doing well. We're in trouble. Can we talk? We really need your help. I read it 3 times, each word pushing up old emotions like dust rising from a carpet that had been stomped on too many times. There was no apology. No, I'm sorry for what we said to you. No acknowledgement of the damage they'd done. Just, we're in trouble. We need your help. I tossed my phone onto the bed and paced my tiny room. My chest felt tight, but not from fear this time. I was angry. After everything, after telling me I wasn't worth their money, their trust, their belief, suddenly, I was valuable. A part of me wanted to ignore them completely, to let them feel the consequences of their choices without my involvement. Another part of me, the part that still remembered movie nights, birthday cakes, and the way my mother used to fix my hair before school, felt something heavier: guilt, responsibility, the leftover instinct to protect the very people who had hurt me. I brought my frustration to Sarah the next day. She sat at her usual corner table in the cafe, laptop open, hands wrapped around a mug. They only messaged you because they need something, she said after I showed her the text. Not because they suddenly realized they were wrong. I know, I said, but they're still my family. She held my gaze. Being your family doesn't give them unlimited access to you, or your skills, or your emotional energy. You're allowed to choose how much of yourself you give to them. I hated that she was right. I hated that I still felt like a kid waiting for someone to tell me what to do. What would you do? I asked. She thought for a moment. I'd ask myself one question. Can I help without destroying myself in the process? If the answer is no, then the answer is no. That night, I stared at the phone again, rereading my mother's message. Every line translated in my head to one thing. We didn't believe in you when you needed us. Now that we need something, we suddenly remember you exist. A part of me wanted to reply immediately with something sharp and final. You made your choice. Live with it. But I didn't. Instead, I typed, "We can talk, but I'm not promising anything." My thumb hovered over the send button for a full 10 seconds. Then I exhaled and pressed it. The moment the message left, my phone buzzed again. "Thank you, Lily. Can we meet this weekend? There's a lot we need to explain." There was a time when I would have rearranged my entire life around a request like that. This time, I checked my calendar first. My commitments, my deadlines, my own life. I chose a time that worked for me, not for them. I didn't realize it then, but that small decision was the first boundary I'd ever set with my family. And soon, I was about to walk into a meeting that would show them exactly who I had become without them. The cafe where we agreed to meet was neutral territory, somewhere between my world and theirs. I arrived 10 minutes early, my palms sweating despite the cool air. I ordered a drink just to have something to hold. When the door finally opened and my mother walked in, my heart dropped into my stomach. She looked older, more lines on her face, tired eyes, shoulders slightly hunched. When she saw me, she hesitated, then gave a small, uncertain smile. "Lily," she said softly. I nodded. "Hi." We sat down, the silence between us heavy enough to crush. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then she took a deep breath. "Things have been bad," she began. "Your father lost his job, and the business. It's falling apart. We've made mistakes. We should have handled things differently with you. But right now, we really need—" My chest tightened. "Stop," I said, more sharply than I intended. She looked startled. "You should have handled things differently?" I repeated. "You told me I wasn't worth investing in. That wasn't a bad choice or a misunderstanding. That was a verdict." Her eyes filled with tears. "We were under a lot of pressure. Your father was stressed, and what?" I cut in. "You both decided that my dreams were disposable? That I was disposable?" The memories flooded back. The dining table, the cold tone, the casual way my future had been dismissed. I leaned forward. "You didn't just say no to paying for my education," I continued. "You said I wasn't worth it. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" She wiped her cheeks, voice trembling. "We thought you'd understand. We thought you'd choose something more stable. We were scared for you." "Scared for me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "No, you were scared of me failing in a way that made you look bad." I could see the words land like blows, but I couldn't stop. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I left with nothing. No money, no support, just the assurance from my own family that I wasn't worth the risk. And I still made something of myself." "I know," she whispered. "We've heard some things about your work, your designs. People talk. Your father doesn't say it, but he's seen your name on things." The thought of my father seeing my work, silently recognizing it, made my jaw clench. "And now?" I asked. "Now that things are falling apart, suddenly I'm useful?" She swallowed hard. "We need help with the business. We need a rebrand, something fresh to attract investors. Your father thought, maybe you could help us? You're talented, Lily. We're proud of you. We just—" "That's enough," I said. I sat back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "I am not a spare tool you pull out of a drawer when everything else fails," I told her. "You don't get to throw me away and then come back when you realize I was valuable all along." A couple at a nearby table glanced over, but I didn't care. "For months," I continued, my voice low but firm, "I worked myself to the bone trying to prove I was worth something. Not to clients, not to strangers, to you. And now, the only reason you're here is because you need me to fix what's broken." My mother looked down, tears dropping onto her hands. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," I added after a moment. "I'm saying it because you need to hear it. You can't treat people like bad investments and then complain when they stop being available." She sniffed. "So that's it? You won't help us?" I hesitated. The old version of me, the one who always wanted to be good enough, useful enough, lovable enough, screamed to say yes. But the person I had become knew better. "No," I said quietly. Not like this. Not as a bandage for the damage you helped create. I won't be your emergency option. She closed her eyes, pain etched into her expression. I'm leaving now, I said, standing up. I hope you figure things out. But I'm not your solution. As I walked out of the cafe, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from freedom. For the first time, I had chosen myself over them. But that wasn't the end of it, because walking away is easy. Living with what comes after, that's where the real test began. For days after that meeting, I moved through my routines on autopilot. I pulled espresso shots, designed logos, responded to client emails, but my mind kept replaying my mother's face at that table. The hurt in her eyes, the cracks in her voice. I didn't regret what I'd said, but I couldn't pretend it hadn't left a mark on me. Sarah noticed almost immediately. You're quieter than usual, she said one afternoon, closing her laptop. How did it go with your mom? I sighed, leaning against the counter. I told her no. They wanted me to fix the business, rebrand everything. Basically, they wanted my skills without ever really acknowledging how they treated me. And you said no, Sarah repeated, nodding slowly. Good. It doesn't feel good, I admitted. It feels like I slammed a door on them, like I'm heartless. You're not heartless, she said. You're setting a boundary. There's a difference. I played with the edge of my apron. What if I went too far? Sarah gave me a look. Lily, they told you that you weren't worth investing in. That kind of wound doesn't get to dictate your every move forever. You're allowed to protect yourself. I knew she was right. But knowing and feeling are two very different things. Over the next few weeks, work picked up even more. EcoVibe's official launch was a success. Their followers grew, orders increased, and Mia sent me a voice message one night. We did it. People love the brand, Lily. Thank you for believing in this with me. Her gratitude was simple, genuine, clean. I contrasted that with my family's sudden interest in my abilities. One relationship was built on mutual respect. The other had been built on control and conditional acceptance. I started to realize something important. Revenge didn't have to look like watching them fail. Revenge could simply be living well without letting them pull me back into the patterns that had broken me. But closure still felt out of reach. One evening, after a long day, I sat in my studio corner, staring at a half-finished layout on my screen. The colors blurred as my thoughts drifted. I opened my messages to my mother. No new texts, no follow-ups, just the last conversation. Her asking for help. Me saying no. I typed and deleted at least 10 different drafts, from cold and distant to overly gentle. Nothing felt right. Then an idea formed, not about fixing the business, but about fixing something in myself. I didn't want to help them out of obligation, but I did want to know that if I walked away, I had done it on my terms, not just out of anger. I needed them to see me clearly, just once. Not as a disappointment, not as a tool, but as a person with limits, power, and choices. So I sent a new message. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation. I'm willing to meet again, not to fix everything, but to talk honestly. If we do this, it has to be different. No pretending, no guilt, no expectations. I'll hear you out. But I need you to hear me too. This time, the reply came slower. Okay, Lily, I'd like that. Just you and me. No pressure. Tell me when and where, and I'll be there. I picked the same cafe, same neutral ground. But I was determined that this time I wouldn't be walking in as the wounded daughter looking for validation. I would be walking in as the woman I had built myself into. I closed my messages, took a deep breath, and whispered to the empty room. This time I set the terms. The second meeting felt different from the moment I walked in. I wasn't early. I wasn't late. I arrived exactly on time, head high, shoulders relaxed. When I spotted my mother at the table, she was already waiting, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes distant. Hi, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Hi, she replied. For a moment, we just sat there, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. I'm not here to revisit every detail of the past, I began. We both know what was said. We both know the damage it caused. She nodded, eyes glossy. We do. I'm here, I continued, to make one thing clear. I have a life now, a career, clients who respect me, a future I'm building with my own two hands. That life is not up for negotiation. Her lips trembled slightly. I understand. Do you? I asked gently. Because when you reached out, it felt like I suddenly had value because I could solve a problem for you. Not because I'm your daughter. Not because of who I am. But because of what I can do. She flinched at that, but she didn't deny it. You're right, she said quietly. We didn't see you clearly. We saw risk where there was potential. We saw failure before you'd even had a chance to try. And that's on us. The admission surprised me. I can't take back what your father said, she added. I can't erase those words. I should have defended you. I didn't. I was scared, and I chose the easier side. I chose silence. There it was. The truth I'd been chasing for years. I'm not telling you this to ask for your forgiveness, she said. I'm telling you because you deserve to hear it. You deserved better than what we gave you. The anger in my chest softened, just a fraction. So what happens now? She asked. What does this look like, if anything, between us? I took a slow breath. Here's what I'm willing to offer, I said. I'm willing to talk, to have some kind of relationship. But it has to be on solid ground. No guilt tripping. No using me only when things go wrong. No expecting me to fix your financial mess. She nodded slowly. We won't ask you to do that. If at some point, I continued, you want professional help with branding or design, you can approach me the same way any other client does. Formally, clearly, with respect. And you'll pay my rates. No family discount, no emotional leverage. A faint, sad smile crossed her face. You really have changed. I had to, I replied. Your version of me didn't survive. We sat with that for a moment. I don't know if your father will ever say the words you want to hear, she admitted. He's proud in his own way, stubborn. But I know he's seen your work, and I know he's realized how wrong he was. That's his burden to carry, I said, not mine. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time, I didn't feel pulled to fix them. I'm not trying to punish you, I added quietly. This isn't about revenge in the way people think, getting even, watching you suffer. My revenge is simpler. What do you mean? She asked. My revenge, I said, meeting her eyes, is living a life where your opinion about my worth doesn't control me anymore. Where your decision not to invest in me doesn't define what I become. Where I can choose if and how you're part of my world. She nodded, a tearful understanding settling in. That's fair, she whispered. More than fair. We talked for a while longer. Not about the business, not about money, but about small things. My work, her garden, the neighbors, the little details that used to fill a home we once shared. When the conversation wound down, there was no big hug, no cinematic reconciliation. Just two people acknowledging that the past would always be there, but the future didn't have to be ruled by it. I'm glad you came, she said as we stood. Even if it's just to set boundaries. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I was always this strong, I replied. You just couldn't see it. We walked out of the cafe separately. As the door closed behind me, the evening air felt different. Not lighter exactly, but clearer. I didn't feel like the broken girl who had left home with 2 suitcases and a shattered sense of worth. I felt like someone who had built herself from the ground up. My phone buzzed as I walked down the street. A new email from Mia about another project. A message from Sarah asking how it went. A notification from EcoVibe's social media where my designs were being shared again and again. My life was full. Not perfect, not painless, but full. The people who once labeled me a bad investment had finally been forced to see the truth. I was never the problem. They just didn't know how to measure my worth. And now, they don't get to.